to start by introducing myself. My name is Rachel Lyons, and I'm the Executive Director of Space for Humanity. And Space for Humanity is cultivating a movement to expand access to space for all of humanity. And so we are really on the cusp of a new era in space exploration. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us during this moment. It is so, so exciting. I want to introduce our host, Sarah Cruddas. Sarah is an international TV host, space journalist, award-winning author, and she's the host of Contact on Discovery Channel and Science Channel. I have had the pleasure of working with Sarah for the past few years. She actually started with Space for Humanity when we were first founded by Dylan Taylor, and she has been supporting us ever since and is on our board of directors. And we are so, so grateful and lucky to have her. So with that, Sarah, I would like to give you the reins.
Give you the floor, the imaginary floor. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone from across the world to this truly historic launch. This is the first commercially operated flight of Crew Dragon. It's the first time the FAA has ever actually given a license to a commercial space vehicle, so it's really ushering in a new era in space exploration. Not only that, it's the first time a space capsule's ever flown with 4 human beings on board. It's the first time more than 3 astronauts have launched to space together since July 2011. And it's this mission, should it be successful, which it will be, of course, will be the longest time a space capsule's ever spent in space, 210 days it's going to be in space for. So it's an incredibly exciting mission. It is a late start for some of us, an early start for others, but a truly global event, because not only have we got American NASA astronauts on board, but we've also got the first international astronaut, a Japanese JAXA astronaut, also on board. So launch is in just under an hour. At the moment, we are currently go for launch. There was a hairy moment not so long ago. I don't know if any of you were watching the NASA coverage, but we thought there was a leak when they closed the hatch, but they've managed to sort that out now. And weather is currently looking good at the moment for launch. It was 50-50 for weather, but currently looking good for launch. So fingers crossed, everyone. And I'm so excited to have you here. And thank you so much, Rachel, for the introduction as well. And thank you, Space for Humanity, and all our sponsors for putting on this event this evening. So first up, I'd like to welcome our first guest. And it's a topic which sounds hugely exciting and I think will inspire a lot of you. The woman is called Ytasha Womack, and she is an author, filmmaker and leading expert in Afrofuturism. Ytasha, I'm going to have to ask you about that immediately. And you're here to discuss the role of space, culture and futurism, and how futurism can help us to really go out and achieve the impossible when it comes to space exploration, all these things we cannot even begin to imagine. Ytasha.
Yes, this is really exciting. I mean, I'm an Afrofuturist writer, and a lot of my writing is inspired around the idea of creating new societies in space. And, obviously one of the first steps is literally getting there, the technologies that get us in that space. But ultimately, just creating spaces where we let go of a lot of the isms of the world and focus on those things that celebrate humanity, and in looking at these new space societies, what do we want to bring with us, and what do we want to leave behind? And I just find that, one, really exciting from like a creative standpoint, but it also at some point will become a real world issue for us as we, start to create societies, whether they're on actual space stations or we're on other planets and moons. We'll have to think about how we're going to live and create collaboratively.
So I have a million questions for you, but first of all, I need to ask, how did you get into Afrofuturism? Because that just sounds fascinating.
Well, it's funny, it was always, I was an Afrofuturist before I knew I was an Afrofuturist. Okay. And I say that because, the term is somewhat new. But ultimately, as a kid, I was really into science, but I saw a relationship between science, history, and creating new futures. And so with that, I just couldn't, I just always felt that thinking about how you could take the best of the past and push that forward in a way that really valued who we are as humans, but celebrating the beauty of culture as well.
Now, do we have everything? We don't have everything right on Earth at the moment. And I think if we're to succeed in space travel, we need to fix a lot of problems on Earth and make sure they don't stay with us, and make sure that when we go to space, it is for all of humanity. Because to date, the majority of people who've been to space have been white, and they've been male, and they've been from certain types of backgrounds. But if we're going to succeed as a species, we need to represent all of Earth as we continue to explore and expand, and eventually become a multiplanetary species, which sounds like science fiction, but I guess that is your realm. But do you believe that space has got the potential and the possibility and the difficulty almost that comes with space travel? Has it got the potential to unite us as a species, and so many problems that we face on Earth could be solved as we move forward in this new era of space exploration?
Well, ultimately, I mean, thinking about space and even moving beyond Earth's stratosphere, it's almost a symbolic of pushing the boundaries or the limits of our imagination. And I often talk about the imagination as a resilience tool, in that people imagine these spaces, they imagine themselves beyond their circumstances, imagine themselves pushing past barriers placed before them. And that way of thinking has changed lives and saved lives when people are in really tough circumstances. And I think in thinking about moving into space, the beauty of space is that it's universal. All cultures, all societies, and all times have had a relationship to moving beyond the Earth's stratosphere. And while the symbolism and what that may have meant, might vary, there's always this reminder that, one, we're on Earth, but also we're in this larger universe. And I just think that in contemplating that moment, it really brings us all together.
So you think space has got the potential to unite us?
Well, inherently, we're already united. It's about not seeing these divisions that have been placed between us. A lot of the barriers that separate us are really self-created. And looking at space and the wonder that it inspires really just helps us to push past some of these, I'll say, created barriers as a reminder of our oneness.
And of course, this mission today is historic for many reasons, but one of them is the fact that Victor Glover will become the first Black NASA astronaut to actually live aboard the International Space Station. And for those who aren't aware, the International Space Station has been permanently crewed for 2 decades. So it's taken 2 decades to get to that point. Obviously, this is great, this is happening now, but do you think it's too little, too late? And how can we build on the success that Victor will have to ensure that he's not the last and that we continue in his footsteps?
Well, there's a legacy of African Americans, people of African descent who went into space. So I'm thinking about Mae Jemison, I'm thinking about Ron Johnson, I'm thinking about, a number of people who are actual astronauts, and then again, people who've worked with NASA. And some of them are celebrated names, some of them not so much. But this is all kind of an extension of people, of a narrative, people who've pushed beyond some tough circumstances, I think, to be able to go beyond the Earth's stratosphere. It's interesting, you can go back to the Tuskegee Airmen, and a lot of the Tuskegee Airmen became sort of some of these foundational pilots who then trained people who, ultimately, if you follow like this line and this pattern of inspiration, inspired other people to go into space. So I think that, he's part of a larger legacy, but even beyond those who actually went into space, there's so many people who felt connected to it. So I think that's a really special thing.
Okay, and moving forward there's a bit of background noise there. That's obviously space-related background noise, I'm sure. But moving forward into the future, how do you think things could potentially progress? I mean, in the work that you do, is it when we're talking about space exploration, it's not only the things you can imagine, it's all the things that you can't imagine that could happen?
Well, I think as we do what they call democratizing the space experience, meaning that more people feel a part of these explorations. More people see themselves as having a relationship with space where one day they could go, or that they can even work in these space industries. And as we sort of collaborate and brainstorm around ideas around the future and come to value the wisdom and insight that comes from different pockets of society and different cultures, I think that we'll create a really interesting tapestry. Not to mention, we'll be able to see that there's a lot of ways to reach out to people who might want to work in the space industry. I'm a person who works very much in the arts, but my childhood interest in the sciences really fueled a lot of my creativity. And I don't think we always think about that bridge about the arts, someone who's really into music, seeing a relationship between music and space exploration, or dance and space exploration. And the more we integrate these other aspects of ourselves and show that there's tangible relationships between these our habits, our desires, these elements of culture, we see that they are tied into, are valued in building space societies. I think it'll just kind of shift the general perspective around who can be in space and who can work in space industries, and maybe those who aren't always thought of in that light.
And we've just, so just to provide a brief update on the launch at the moment, we're currently 80% go for weather, so that's looking good. And I don't know whether you saw Ytasha, but I know, yeah, I can't believe it, I'm so excited. 80% go for launch, and we just saw the crew access arm retract. So under 45 minutes now until launch. How are you feeling right now, Ytasha?
Actually thinking about my grandfather, who I never met. He passed away in 1968, but my mom always tells stories of how he really was so excited about men going into space and actually landing on the moon, but he didn't get a chance to see it. So she always has these stories about him talking about it, looking forward to it. And, this moment just makes me think about so many people who, this was just a dream for them. And, a dream that society couldn't make it to this point. And here we are, able to celebrate it.
I think that just really hits the nail on the head, because this moment is not just about 4 humans going to space, it's about what they represent. And all of us are alive today in a time where, humans throughout history, we know, going back to cave people, they were looking up at the stars, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. But it's only really in the last 50, 60 years that humans have stopped dreaming about the stars, and it's actually become a place we can go. We can physically travel to space and go there. And I think it's such a privilege, all of us alive today, to be living in a time where this is possible, even in a year which feels so difficult for so many. We are living in the best time in terms of technology and just the possibilities of what is to come. But I just wanted to pick up on one point you mentioned, which is art. And then you talk about your love of science, but your love of art as well. And what value do you think, because obviously when we first went to space, it was all about the Cold War, and then it's been about science. But the greatest thing to come from space actually is art and the images we see of the Earth and how that's changed people. And we're shortly going to be talking with 2 of our other guests in a moment. But what value do you think art will have in the future of space exploration and as we extend our human presence beyond Earth?
Well, it's a point of inspiration, but I also think that it's in sort of capturing the narrative of space. We do that through artistic images, through storytelling. There's a real interconnection between the stories of space, the real world stories, and our ability to, I would say, sort of encapsulate it in a narrative that we're all inspired by. So, the creativity that could come from people who actually go into space, I think would be really, really interesting. But also thinking about these parallels between the real life experience of people who are in space and then these artistic moments of inspiration that people have. And I think there's probably more of an intersection between those two things than we really think. The experience, again, of dancing or creating music or painting, how that can feel very intimate, but also transcendent transcendent, in the same way that physical space exploration can. So I think it expands the human experience. And the more we can capture that in storytelling, the easier having that philosophical discussion will become.
And just finally, I wish we could talk to you for hours, but just finally, what to date, to you personally, has been the greatest artistic moment to come from space exploration?
Oh my goodness, that's really...
No pressure.
I know. You know, I'm such a music person, and this is going to sound really funny, but I can't help but think about the 70s and all of these like funk music album covers and these jazz music album covers. I'm thinking about like Herbie Hancock album covers. I'm thinking about Parliament Funkadelic, George Clinton, these album covers with their merging images of Egypt and space, and you know, and it was a really interesting intersection of, or even someone like a Sun Ra, and you know, these ideas of like pulling from ancient wisdom, but then pulling from the future. So this model of ancient to the future, which is the jazz collective, the AACM's motto, ancient to the future, I think is really something that makes us feel a little more holistic. So I would go straight to music.
Do you know why I love that answer so much? Because I'd have never thought of that. I would have just thought you'd say Earthrise like everyone else. And I just love it. And I think that just proves why we need an artist's perspective on all that we do in space exploration. Ytasha, Womack, I'm so sorry we've got no time left, but thank you so much for your insights and enjoy the launch, and hopefully we'll get your reaction afterwards.
Oh, thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you. Great. So our next panelist is talking about, or next panelists are talking about space as a tool for transformation, and how we talk about so much about exploring, to going to new frontiers and to really pushing the limit of what humanity can do in space. But actually, one of the greatest things to come from space exploration is Earth, and that transformative effect of actually seeing the Earth from space, and how it's reduced moonwalking astronauts, military astronauts to tears, how it's enabled astronauts who were scientists to come back and become artists or to care about the planet, and how really going to space is about transforming life on Earth. So our next two guests, we've got Claudia Wells, who's chairman of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and she also sits on the board of directors of Space for Humanity. And then a man by the name of Frank White. And I feel, Frank, you don't really need an introduction because you're known to so many, but I would like to introduce you as the man who coined the term the overview effect on top of many, many other great works, and authoring, I think it's 10 books. Good evening to you both.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi, Frank.
Hello, Claudia. How are you?
I'm well. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Very exciting time.
How are you both feeling ahead of the launch then?
Super excited, as always. And maybe uniquely, I'm just excited to be with Frank again. We've been doing a lot of speaking lately. I think I'm going to print t-shirts up for us.
So you like a double act? Should I be expecting a good thing?
Yeah.
What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, I just want to say it's really an honor, Sarah, to be with Claudia, because, you know, she's carrying on the work of Edgar Mitchell. And if you think about the overview effect and how it's transformed astronauts, I don't think there's any astronaut who was more transformed than Edgar Mitchell by his experience. And also, he came back and tried to do something significant with that experience, which is the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And so he just is an icon, I think, in the astronaut community when we talk about the overview effect and its impact and its transformational impact, not only on him, but then on the world through his work and through his founding of IONS.
And of course, Edgar Mitchell, for those who don't know, I'm sure most of you do, but he was the fourth human being to walk on the sixth. Someone wrote fourth in my notes. Human being to walk on the surface of the moon with Apollo 14, of course, and Commander Al Shepard. But at that time in the late 60s and early 1970s, people weren't really thinking about the emotional or the human side effects of seeing the Earth from space. This was a Cold War, and people were thinking about get the job done, land on the surface of the moon before the Soviets do. But what happened instead, Claudia, was something different, that these astronauts, and Edgar Mitchell's probably the greatest example of this, they came back transformed or profoundly changed by what they witnessed, particularly those who went as far away, you know, 250,000 miles to the moon.
Right. Well, I'll say that Edgar used to say that he went up as a technologist and he came back as a humanitarian. And he started Ions 2 years after he landed from the moon. And the reason he started Ions is because he wanted to know what the heck happened to him in space by seeing the Earth from space. He had this epiphany, many people know. He described it as an explosion of awareness, a profound sense of interconnectedness or oneness that was visceral and instant. And it was accompanied by this feeling of ecstasy. And he described all this as an epiphany, or sometimes he used the term big picture effect. But the bottom line is that he wasn't expecting it. He did have what I would call a prepared consciousness. He did have some leanings toward an understanding that the materialist paradigm was not complete and that didn't really describe the way the world worked. And I think it's because he had this prepared consciousness that his perception was open enough and flexible enough to have the epiphany he had. And I often say at Ions, you know, can you imagine what a tragedy it would have been if he didn't have that openness and agility or even interest. And instead of looking out of the window of the capsule and seeing the Earth and the moon and the sun and the heavens, he was focused on his instrument panel the whole time. If that had happened, or if he looked out the window and only saw what he expected to see, his home planet in space, then he wouldn't have had this overview effect. There wouldn't be an Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is impactful for us. I'm sure someone else would have had it eventually, but yeah, it's just, it was a real watershed moment, I think, certainly for those of us who are spending our lives researching this effect and researching how to make the most of these opportunities for the transformation of consciousness.
And what does it mean to you personally to be involved with this? And why does it matter so much that we use that experience, even if you don't experience it yourself? Because I know offline, you and I and Frank were talking about how it's not just about how it transforms the individual, but then how it transforms other people on Earth. But what does it mean to you, Claudia, to be involved with this? Why does it matter so much? It
matters to me because I know that if we transform consciousness, then everything transforms. I used to work on individual problems as a social change agent, and I worked with corporations and I worked in a university setting, and I realized actually through Ions, it was the president of Ions at that time, Willis Harmon, who said to me, you know, you're working at the level of symptom and not at the level of cause. So we can work on climate change, or we can work on hunger, we can work on social inequity, and we can keep trying to put out the fires, so to speak, one at a time. Or we can say, what is the root cause of all these crises? And work at that level. And so for me, it is that level of human consciousness where a belief in fundamental separation lies. If we transform that, then everything else will be transformed. That's an incredible answer. I just want to interrupt slightly to say it's now 30 minutes to go until launch, and we've just got word that it is a go for launch. So the spacecraft propellant has been fueled. Let me get that started. I can smell it. Has been fueled with propellant. I was so blown away by your answer, Claudia. I was like, but just in terms of, I think you gave a very profound answer in terms of symptoms and cause, and often there's arguments against going to space and why we should be fixing problems on Earth. But would you argue it's that bigger picture, that to coin your own term, Frank, and that overview, that sense of change of who we are, that can really benefit life on Earth and continue to benefit people as we push forward in space? 1,000%. I mean, yes, it is the technologies that are being developed that will also help. But I used to be an environmentalist, and I've actually spent decades now working on shifting consciousness, because I realized that's the only way. When we realize that we're one with each other and we're one with the planet, and the planet is one with the universe, then we see ourselves differently. The story of who we are and what we're capable of and what the potential of our species is and why we're here completely changes. And in that story, we wouldn't dream of hurting the environment or each other. And Frank, do you want to pick up on that as well?
Yeah, well, I would just want to agree with what Claudia has said, and also Ytasha, in the sense that this overview effect, which has been directly experienced by a small number of human beings, has already had a huge impact on our society, on our species. And, I was feeling just incredibly emotional as I was watching NASA live as they were going to the launch pad, because what I realized is I actually experienced life before humans had the overview effect. I know what that was like. And we can see the changes in society that are already happening in society. And if we want to repair and fix the problems that are on the planet, we have to have this perspective. We have to have this consciousness. And so it even goes beyond that, because not only are there no borders and boundaries on the earth except those that we create in our own minds, there are none in the universe, there are none in the solar system. And so we are looking at transformation of our culture and our species, because we're going to move from playing what I call a finite game to an infinite game. And that changes everything. And when we start to see humanity coming together to do, for example, a launch, because it takes thousands of human beings to do a launch of 4 people, we see what people can do when we come together and when we understand, as Ytasha said, we're already connected. We just have to see it. And as Claudia mentioned, when we get past that separation, we see what humanity can do. And hopefully we'll all be inspired by that, not just our astronauts who are, as some astronauts have pointed out, they're our representatives. They represent us. And that's why they're so anxious to come back and tell their stories, because they want us to, at least emotionally and viscerally and spiritually, have the experience they've had.
And as the type of person going to space changes, so at the moment, the majority of people who've been to space have been either scientists or military personnel or a combination of the two. But certainly, I know we're working with this through Space for Humanity, but over the next few decades, the type of person going to space is going to change. So instead of sending scientists and military personnel, we're going to be sending artists and musicians and entrepreneurs and people from all walks of life. How will that impact the overview effect? Will we get a different kind of experience with this because people are going in with a different mindset? And you have to keep your answer rather brief. I do apologise because we've got to go to Alan Stern second. But if you could answer in a minute, if that is possible, Frank, that would be amazing.
Just briefly, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big change because professional astronauts have a mission. They aren't, even today, they're not going for the view. But the people who are signing up now and the people who are going to go with Space for Humanity, that is why they're going. And as Claudia mentioned about Edgar, and as Edgar said to me, the people who really transform are those who are open to it. So we're going to have people who are open to it, who are going to go and come back and share their stories.
And just finally, I have to ask you both very quickly. There's too many questions. We have too many great guests. This is the problem. But you were both privileged enough to meet and work with Edgar Mitchell. What was he like, and what does it mean to you both to have had that experience?
Claudia?
I will say in this very short amount of time that I have that he was such a humble human being. You wouldn't guess that he was the great man he was in terms of being accomplished, but you knew he was a great man in his heart and a brilliant man. And you're absolutely right, it is a singular privilege to have been close to Edgar.
I was going to use the same terminology, that he had great humility and yet great power. And he supported me from the day I met him and interviewed him. He gave me a profound interview, which I quote almost every day because of its wisdom. But from that day on, he supported the work that I've been doing. And I'm just incredibly grateful to Edgar for that.
Well, thank you so much for that fascinating insight. And of course, on on this mission, Victor Glover. He's a rookie astronaut currently, so we'll be minting one more human being in space and one more human being who gets to experience the overview effect and come back to Earth, hopefully changed for the better, and to continue the work that both you guys are doing. Frank and Claudia, thank you so much. I wish we could talk to you all night. I think the work you're doing is incredible, and you keep on inspiring people. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be here.
Okay, so we have just over 23 minutes to go until launch. We're currently a go for launch, which is just incredible. I hope all of you are excited. So we're going to be cutting to NASA coverage in around 15 minutes. But before that, I feel like my next guest actually doesn't even need an introduction, but I will give him one anyhow. It's Dr. Alan Stern. He is the principal investigator for the New Horizons mission to Pluto. And he's also a future astronaut. He'll be traveling on the first NASA-funded mission with Virgin Galactic as a scientist astronaut. And Alan, welcome.
Hi, Sarah. It's great to be here. How are you?
How's it going? I feel like I haven't spoken to you in a very long time.
Just by email.
Yeah, that's true. So how are you feeling right now ahead of the launch?
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. But like every launch, I'm always super excited and a little bit apprehensive.
Yeah, and I don't even know where to begin with speaking to you, because you've obviously pushed the boundaries in terms of what humanity has done in space with New Horizons, the first spacecraft to transform our view of Pluto and give us a new view into the Kuiper Belt as well. And now, huge congratulations, you're due to go into space in the year 2022. How are you feeling about that experience?
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. It's something I've wanted to do even before my career started, even when I was a boy. And it's really a dream come true. And for me, it's particularly a dream come true because I'm going to work in space and to actually contribute to the development of space. And hopefully this will be the first of many suborbital flights for our team. And hopefully they'll lead to orbital flights as well. So I look at this as one small step.
And of course, Claudia and Frank were just talking about the impact of actually seeing the Earth from space. I appreciate you're going to be working and this is a suborbital flight, but are you prepared for how the experience of going to space and actually seeing the Earth from space is going to change you?
I have to say I'm not prepared. I am looking forward to it and looking forward to that change. It's so ubiquitous in the population of space flyers, Frank's overview effect. And I think even for suborbital flyers, seeing the rounded ball of the Earth against the blackness of space is got to be a transformational experience.
And of course, the opportunity, did you ever imagine, maybe even 10 years ago, that you would have the opportunity to go into space as a scientist astronaut for NASA with Virgin Galactic, or was that something which still seemed like science fiction?
Well, actually, at the Southwest Research Institute where I work, we have had a program in place now for over a decade, which I lead as principal investigator, to use Virgin and other suborbital vehicles for the applications in research and education. And so we've been working towards this for a long time. Also, it's a little known piece of space trivia that I was once selected for a space shuttle mission as a payload specialist. Unfortunately, that never came to fruition because of a decision by one of the NASA administrators to fly a Canadian doing something else instead. But yeah, I've wanted this a long time and I'm really looking forward to getting going, raring to go.
So I feel like that is a little known moment of space trivia, but how does it feel then? Does it feel like your moment of reckoning to know that you're finally going to be able to, figuratively touch the stars and actually achieve that lifetime ambition?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It feels a lot more real now. And of course, it's a great honor and a great responsibility to be selected to be the first of the researcher corps to fly on commercial suborbital missions and commercial spacecraft at all. I hope
and do you
this
think
is really something that grows tremendously, because we've been stymied in spaceflight, particularly in the space sciences, by having to do everything robotically to automate our experiments, which introduces a lot of cost and a lot of complication, a lot of failure modes that we just don't have when we put a human in the loop that can do the experiment so much more simply than through automation.
And do you think your mission, once it's gone ahead, will actually pave the way for many, many more? I know you're the first of some, but will it pave the way for a new way of doing science in space?
I expect so. And there are a lot of researchers that want to do their microgravity, their remote sensing science themselves. And I think that we're going to see this expand to a very large population of flyers. And as the flight rates go up, I think that we'll see suborbital payload specialists from, dare I say, most of the countries on Earth in this decade, if things go well.
And with your news that you're going to be traveling into space in the next few years, does it give you a different perspective now, watching the launch of Crew Dragon and thinking about what the crew must be going through right now, the excitement they must be feeling, the training they must be feeling? Does it give you a new perspective on space exploration?
Well, it certainly makes it a little bit more real to know that that my first space flight is now, so to speak, on the books. And I'll tell you that I've been involved in so many, including space shuttle missions where I had experiments that were conducted by NASA astronauts. And I've done so many high altitude research missions myself that I really know a little bit about probably what's going through their heads. I have so many colleagues and friends that flew on the shuttle and flew a number of times, and who I've worked with since they finished their NASA careers, or even during their NASA careers, that I've had a behind the scenes glimpse at that now for quite a while, since the 1990s. And I have to tell you, I have tremendous respect for all of the people who are dedicating their lives to doing this kind of thing, including the 4 who'll be launching in just over 15 minutes.
And what is it, you know, because we all of us within the space industry, we do this because we love this, but what sparked your interest in space? What has driven you your entire life to explore and to push the boundaries and to ultimately get to where you are now? You've got a spacecraft in, you know, you led a mission to Pluto and now you're heading to space yourself. What drove you, and how can you continue to inspire others with your ambitions?
Well, I could tell you, Sarah, when I was a little boy, I would watch the earliest space flights, and I was just swept off my feet. It was so much larger than life, and it seemed like the destiny and future of humanity, that all I wanted to do was to get through grade school and high school and college, and hope that I could have a part in that in my career, that I could qualify to work for NASA or to work with NASA. And of course, it was my dream, like it was the dream of a lot of little kids, to want to fly in space. And fortunately, that's all seeming to work out. And sometimes I just pinch myself in the morning.
I don't blame you, to be honest with you. What would your advice, because we've got younger audience members listening from across the world, what would your advice be to anyone who wants to follow in your footsteps and to pursue their dreams of space? Absolutely.
Well, I would give people two pieces of advice. The first is stick with it. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of setbacks. Overcome them and persist. And the second is to find what you really love doing the most, because everybody's different. Some people are good at math, and some people are good at engineering, and some people are great at writing code. Other people are great at arts and the humanities and the written word, or teaching. And whatever you're really turned on by is, I think that's what you should follow. And we need all those skill sets and all those career paths to make a space program and to make a commercial space economy. So you can get into space from almost any direction, but follow your heart, do what you love, excel, be at the very top of what your game can possibly be, and stick with it, even when you've got setbacks.
Well, I think that's excellent advice. And just to interject, it is now less than T-minus 15 minutes, T-minus 14 minutes until launch. Alan, can you just briefly run through, obviously the crew are going to be living aboard the International Space Station for over 200 days. It's the first time we're going to have 7 astronauts aboard the International Space Station for that length of time. Can you talk through the highlights of the mission? Because we're going to, I heard somewhere today, there's going to be a 300% increase in capacity, US capacity for science on the space station. Can you talk us through some of the experiments they're going to be doing and why they matter so much?
Yeah, well, Sarah, I can't speak very specifically because I'm not specifically familiar with what this crew's palette of experiments are going to be, but I know that they're going to be involved in fundamental physics experiments, Earth observation experiments, space adaptation, physiology experiments, microgravity experiments, robotics and technology development. That they are, now that we've got a 7th crew member on board, or we will as of tomorrow, a lot of the activity on board the ISS is that the human crew is there doing the maintenance activities, fixing things or building new experiments up and getting them ready to go. And there's very little time left over in the day for each individual astronaut to actually conduct research. But we've got that covered with a crew of 6. And so when you put up a 7th person, they can be there almost full time for research, or they can pitch in on the maintenance and operations activities, and then each of the others can have more time for research. So that's really a very large bump when we go to 7. And if we're ever able to go to 8 on the ISS for extended periods of time, so I think we'll see even more research being done.
And when we look at the future of space exploration and the rise of private industry and the commercial space era that we're now entering into, I think, with this launch that finally signals that, what role do you think private science experiments and private space stations will have in the future?
Well, I think the private stations are going to do a lot of research for third-party companies and also for countries around the world that doesn't get done today. I think there's going to be a lot of space development, systems testing. I think private space is going to be everything from suborbital to interplanetary in our lifetimes. And just as the fact that we don't just have, for example, the Air Force doing flights in the atmosphere, the advent of commercial spaceflight is going to make the same kind of revolution in spaceflight that we saw in computing when it went from rare to routine, and prices dropped and capabilities went sky high in the 1980s, 90s, 2000s, as we saw computers infuse into all parts of our life. And I think spaceflight is going to similarly have a flowering that's very much like that, because of the efforts of people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and many of the small entrepreneurs who are involved as well. And of course, Richard Branson and the other more famous entrepreneurs as well, who have figured out that space is our future in so many ways.
And just finally, I'm going to pick up on that last point about the future. If you could look into your crystal ball, so to speak, what are your biggest hopes for space exploration in the next few decades?
Well, I hope that many people are living and working in space in many different kinds of abodes, from commercial space stations to government and even international space stations like we have now, and then on to the moon, Mars, and the closer planets. We shouldn't stop at Mars. We should be in the asteroid belt. We should be among the near-Earth asteroids. We should be humans to Mercury and Venus and the moons of Jupiter. And I think with the advance of technology, we can conquer all those things. And someday, even out in the Kuiper Belt, and footprints and researchers all the way out there on planets like Pluto.
So one day humans will see those cryovolcanoes on Pluto.
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Alan Stern, for your time. Dr. Alan Stern, future astronaut and principal investigator for the New Horizons mission to Pluto. Now, we are T-minus 10 minutes and 16 seconds until launch, so we're now going to cross to the Kennedy Space Center. We are so fortunate enough to have our reporter on the ground, MaryLiz Bender, who is the founder of Cosmic Perspective. MaryLiz, how's it going there?
Oh my gosh, I am shaking. I am like already emotional. I feel like I'm going to cry. It's crazy how beautiful this day turned out. It was 50% go at the beginning of the day due to weather. Florida, you never know what's going to happen. But we came out here, saw the most beautiful sunset, literally from our end, even though I know they had some issues, as they were loading, as the crew was getting into the capsule. But from this vantage point, I mean, it is the most stunning night. Weather's perfect. The stars are out. And, Sarah, we talked about this at the Mars 2020 launch party. This experience, being up close, so close to the launch pad, it's like, us media sit out here across the water and we just kind of meditate. Like, we have to wait for a while after we get set up. And it's a really beautiful forced pause to consider what's actually happening. We're all in this crazy bustle for so long, but now that we're here, I've just been thinking about, what this really means. This is a completely new era. And, I love what Ytasha said earlier about how, we use our imaginations to design the future. And then many of the engineers and the scientists help us build that dream. And this is the culmination of all those efforts coming into one beautiful event. So I'm obviously just full of emotion right now.
I love it. I always like to think it's scientists who dream it and it's the engineers who have to go and build it. It's always the engineers who make the impossible possible. Now, MaryLiz, you've seen a lot of launches. I think that's fair to say. And this is your job, of course. You're based not far from the Kennedy Space Center, but this one feels really special. Is that correct?
This one feels different. I mean, completely different. There's just something about it. First of all, there have never been 4 humans aboard. I got to talk to all 4 humans. I not only got to talk to them, I got to talk to so many people that have been working with them and working on the capsule, teams at SpaceX and NASA Johnson and here at KSC. And to know so many people that are involved, I feel way more attached. But yeah, this is really the opening of a brand new era. This is the first operational flight. NASA has said, yeah, you can use this capsule. You can reuse this capsule. Yeah, let's get some other agencies in there. Let's get a Japanese astronaut on board. I just can't wait to see this new era of commercial spaceflight really take off. And, yeah, exactly. Thank you. My puns are so good, I don't even recognize them anymore. But I just have to say, seeing these 4 humans go to space, we've only had one human launch prior to this since I've been here. So this is a really emotional thing for me. I've seen over 70 rocket launches up close, documented them completely. But when humans are on board, you feel it. You really feel it. So,
and of course, this is going to be the first nighttime launch for Crew Dragon.
Oh man, yeah. That's it. I would say no. I think DM1, which was with humans on board.
Yeah,
with humans on board. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, you're gonna see if you can see, my whole night sky is gonna turn to day. It is the most stunning thing to see a launch at night. So for anybody out there who hasn't done that yet, get as close as you can when you can, as safely as you can, and see it for yourself, because, you'll drop to your knees. It's awe and wonder.
Okay, well, thank you so much, MaryLiz, for that. And we will let you get back to the launch. We're now 6 minutes away from launch. And thank you so much. And of course, you can follow MaryLiz on Twitter as well, and all the work of the Cosmic Perspective. So thank you so much. And perhaps we'll catch up with you after the launch. So we are now 5 minutes, T-minus 5 minutes until launch. And with no further ado, we're going to cut to NASA for the final 5 minutes.
Onboard computers will take control of the vehicle. Both fuel on first and second stage is complete, and liquid oxygen loading continues, with the second stage at about 80%, first stage at 95%. Something else you might notice is water rushing the pad shortly before liftoff. That's to suppress the sound and keep any sound from imparting a load on Crew Dragon as it prepares to lift off.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count. Dragon is on internal power. Falcon and propellant tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
Good confirmation that Dragon is on internal power. And now we'll be looking for a major milestone before we launch today. That'll be the strong back retract. John, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Leah, if we get a close-up of the Dragon at second stage.
Strong back is retracting.
We've heard the call out, strong back retracting. That's a 2-step sequence. First, there are clamp arms around the very top of the second stage. You can see one of them just above the gaseous oxygen vapors coming out of the second stage. Those arms will open up, and then just inside of T-minus 4 minutes, once the arms are released, we'll begin to retract the strong back alongside the vehicle. It'll move back 2 degrees in position, and by about T-minus 3.5 minutes, we ought to be finished with that. The strong back will retract to 45 degrees away from the rocket once we hit T0 as part of the liftoff sequence.
And at T-minus 3 minutes, we'll
Right now, we're waiting for the retract. And there you can see the strong back is beginning to move away from the vehicle. And it looks like we are just about into the required pre-launch position, just a couple degrees away from the Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule. But right now, T-minus 3 minutes, 8 seconds, everything continues to be go on Dragon and Falcon 9.
currently standing.
Dragon is in terminal count.
And Dragon is in terminal count, and we are standing by to hear that stage 1 liquid oxygen loading is complete. Stage
1 LOX load is complete.
And there we have it. And stage 2 should finish shortly after, at about 2 minutes prior to liftoff.
So now the last major event is finished liquid oxygen loading on stage 2. Wraps up at about T-minus 2 minutes. Then at about T-minus a minute and a half, we have to drain back and vent down the liquid line that goes up the strong back alongside the Falcon 9. If you see a large white cloud about midway down around the rocket, that's normal. That's, again, just the gaseous oxygen hitting the warm, moist Florida air.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete. Dragon is in auto idle.
And good calls that stage 2 liquid oxygen load is complete. That means we have full fuel on the first and second stages, that densified kerosene, and we're full of the oxidizer. Liquid oxygen on the first and second stage as well. Now just a minute and 20 seconds until liftoff today. And as you can hear those sounds, like Soichi Noguchi said, the vehicle is alive. Coming up in 10 seconds, we'll look to hear that Dragon is in countdown and Falcon 9 is in startup.
Dragon is in countdown. FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and it's now controlling.
50 seconds now until liftoff. That FTS you heard is flight termination.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch. SpaceX, this is Resilient. Roger, go.
Go for launch, and at 37 seconds, the International Space Station flying over Kennedy Space Center.
Crew-1 for all.
Crew Dragon poised to go catch it. 20 seconds till liftoff.
T-minus 15 seconds. Falcon 9 is configured for flight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
And resilience rises. Not even gravity contains humanity when we explore as one for all. That's the word we want to hear. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Seconds into this historic mission, flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Stage 1 is preparing to throttle down. This is in preparation for max Q, which is maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Stage 1, throttle down.
Is that call out for throttle down?
Power and telemetry continue to be nominal for the vehicle, now traveling at 262 meters per second.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
That call out the Falcon 9 is supersonic, and we will be passing through max Q here shortly, the largest structural load during ascent.
Max Q.
There's that call out. That Falcon has passed through max Q.
One Bravo.
And we've just entered stage 1 Bravo abort mode. That's going to take them through the end of the first stage burning just before second stage activates off the coast of North Carolina. T plus 1 minute and 40 seconds into flight, Dragon and Falcon 9 traveling 709 meters per second. That call that MVAC chill is underway, the Merlin vacuum engine.
Now with the call out of MVAC chillin, similar to what we saw in the first stage Merlin engines, the second stage engine being prepared for its ignition coming up in just over 30 seconds from now. We're a half a minute away from 3 quick events in rapid succession. We're going to get main engine cutoff. The 9 Merlin engines will throttle down and then shut down. We're going to get stage separation.
Stage 1 throttle down.
And then ignition of the second stage engine. We've begun the throttle down in preparation for stage separation.
And we have 2 Alpha. Stage separation confirmed.
And you see that stage separation has confirmed. There goes that MVAC engine. Stage 2, Crew-1 is now on their way to the International Space Station. On the right side of your screen, you see stage 2 continuing to burn. Over on the left-hand side is stage 1 preparing for its return to Earth.
Currently on the left side, you can't make out much. It's a couple hours after sunset in Florida, but the grid fins have deployed on the first stage. The first stage is now unpowered, but with the velocity it had, it continues to coast up to an apogee before it begins to descend back into Earth's atmosphere. Now, as we watch, maybe we'll see the lights of Florida or the eastern seaboard in the background, but otherwise there's not going to be much to see. On the right-hand side,
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
You can hear the call out. Trajectory is nominal.
Nominal trajectory.
And we've heard the call out Bermuda. That means Bermuda ground station has the signals from the second stage of the Dragon and Falcon 9.
We're still continuing as stage 2 burns to listen for those abort zones. We are now in 2A through 2E to Echo, taking us up over the northern Atlantic.
Right now you can see the second stage engine glowing with the standard red that we have come to see over all these missions. Indicates everything's looking good. Power on the MVAC engine continues to run at 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of outer space.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
And trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
And we hear the reply from the crew acknowledging we have a nominal trajectory. Dragon made it to the Falcon 9 second stage, heading into the low Earth orbit, where Dragon will then separate and begin its trip the rest of the way to the space station.
We'll be looking for SECO, second stage engine cutoff, coming up at 8 minutes and 48 seconds after launch today. So about 3.5 minutes from now, Dragon and Falcon 9, second stage, currently flying 2,979 meters per second.
Now, currently, the first stage has begun its descent. It is through apogee. It's beginning to come back down where it... Coming up in another couple of minutes, we will have the entry burn where we begin to slow down the first stage.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another call out, another nominal trajectory, just what we love to hear.
That voice you're hearing on board Dragon, that's Commander Mike Hopkins speaking for our 4-person crew as they continue their journey now 6 minutes and 12 seconds after liftoff. Trajectory still nominal.
And Leah, you can see on the indicator altitude, 201 kilometers. We're now beginning to essentially level out and pick up velocity to get us into low Earth orbit. We're a little under 1 minute from the ignition for the entry burn on first stage.
And we're about 2 minutes away.
Dragon SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Great news. Now 7 minutes after launch, second stage engine continues to burn, everything looking good. And we'll see that continue to burn for another 1 minute and about 38 seconds.
Right now on stage 2, the crew's getting about a little more than 2.5 G's of acceleration. First stage preparing to ignite for the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
And we've got ignition of the entry burn, center engine, followed by the other 2 restart engines. First stage now getting ready to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is about a 29-second burn, and it's designed to slow the vehicle way down. We're going to shed about 70% of the velocity of that dropping first stage by the time this landing burn completes. I should say by the time the entry burn completes, which is now over. First stage on target for the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Meanwhile, we're watching second stage getting close to getting into orbit.
That's right. We've got about 30
Stage
seconds
2
more.
internal guidance.
And now just about 20 seconds more of stage 2 continuing to burn until we see second stage engine cutoff, or SECO. We'll coast for a few minutes afterward to allow the rates in motion
Shannon.
Roger, Shannon.
There's that call for Shannon. That's Shannon, Ireland, an abort zone, but it looks like we continue smoothly to orbit today.
MVAC shutdown.
And we've got shutdown of the second stage engine on time.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Launch escape system is disarmed. And SpaceX copies.
And Leah, the words we like to hear, a nominal orbit insertion.
That's right, John. Nominal orbit insertion, as we mentioned, stage 2. Oh, looks like some action on stage 1. And I believe we've had a touchdown on the drone ship.
We've got stage 1 has touchdown on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. But now the more important news, second stage is in orbit, right where we want, right on time. And we're getting ready for our next major activity, which will be Dragon spacecraft separation.
MaryLiz, how are you feeling?
Oh my gosh, you guys, I wish that you were here.
Describe for all of us watching how that felt to witness that in person.
Oh, I can't. I wish I could. The crazy thing is that I was on a camera. And so, you know, there's like all this anticipation over, is my shot going to come out? Is the dew going to fog up my lens? All this silly stuff, right? But what's cool is that I had kind of a wide shot. So I had like a good 10 seconds where I could just sit there and bask in the light as the sun rose in the middle of the night. That's how it felt. And then I got to get on my duty and I tracked the rocket all the way until just now, like literally 1 minute ago. So I tracked the capsule all the way up. And then I actually got to see the booster, the landing booster, come down. I saw the landing burn, and I got to capture that with my video as well. So I'm feeling like so many versions of excited, and it's just a moment of intense celebration. Ryan over here, I don't know if you can see him in the dark, but he was tracking the whole rocket with telescope and joystick controls. And he and I were like talking back and forth, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's going. It's so beautiful.
And just before I briefly, cars in the background, so just set the scene for where you are right now with the cars in the background. Is that people leaving site already?
Yeah, it's so crazy. Like they bring us out here and they're like, all right, wrap it up. But thankfully we get a little extra time since we have a big scope. But yeah, I mean, I've got, I don't know, maybe like, how many cars would you say are here? Probably 30 cars full of media, and it's just a giant line down the causeway of photographers and people doing stuff like this. So, the excitement is real. We're all really nervous right before launch, but then we finally get to celebrate and get excited about what we just witnessed.
And of course, successful landing of the first stage, and the crew have had their orbital they've been inserted into orbit. So looking good for Crew Dragon for the first official launch of Crew Dragon. Resilience is on its way to the International Space Station. I just want to bring in Ytasha, Claudia, Frank, Alan, and of course Rachel as well. How are you all feeling having watched that?
Just fantastic, isn't it?
Really emotional.
So excited. So excited.
Really inspired by what human beings can do. Once again, it's amazing. It really is. And the idea that the spacecraft is alive, I think we really felt that. The sounds it was making and the fact it was ready to get into space. Really touching.
Yeah, I think I heard some commentary about hearing the dragon roar as it launched.
Yeah, really.
Sarah, and then SpaceX makes something very hard look very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ride a SpaceX? You're next, Alan.
I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready. Rachel?
And then, and zooming out and just thinking about the simplicity of it, like there's all of these, everything that's happening that needs to come together to make this happen. But then you zoom out and you just think about the fact that there are literally humans at this moment that are leaving this planet and going into space, like that are literally leaving this planet. It is awe-inspiring to think about where we are at in space exploration and what is going to be happening and what is happening.
And of course, it was 20 years ago earlier this month, that, we haven't had all humans on Earth. So no child, no person under the age of 20 has ever known a time when all humans have been living on planet Earth. So that's just an incredible fact. And to think how far we've come as we usher in this new era of commercial space exploration. Claudia, how are you feeling having watched that?
Well, my reaction is actually something that reminds me of Edgar again in your last question, because I feel this overwhelming sense of love. And that really is what the best answer about Edgar would have been, because Edgar believed, his epiphany showed him that agape love, unconditional love, is the organizing principle of the entire universe. And I just felt that organizing principle at work, helping everything happen as smoothly as it was happening and moving humanity to its destiny. So yeah, love is the word. And then I have just a quick reflection on what MaryLiz said when she said she had that short window of time where she could lean back and just enjoy. And that's one of the things we learned about the overview effect, is it tends to happen in the non-goal-oriented states, like when Edgar was leaning back and looking out the window and not thinking about what he had to do. So just a remarkable experience within a remarkable group of people. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I just think it's truly a privilege to be, all of us, to be together in this time when humanity really is entering this new era of space exploration, because it's often when I write and talk about space, I draw the analogy with aviation 100 years ago and how you had the wealthy go first. But I think that's where it stops, the analogy, when it comes to space flight. And really, we need to send people from all walks of life into space if we are to succeed. And that's what certainly we're doing with Space for Humanity. So we're really entering an exciting time for human exploration of space. And it's an overused sentiment, but the idea that it's no longer science fiction, but it is science prediction, and also all the things we can't imagine are going to come true. So it's a hugely exciting era for human spaceflight. And I just think almost this is more exciting than Demo 1, because this is it now. This is a tried and tested mode of transport. This is how US astronauts and international astronauts are going to be getting to space from US soil. Of course, we've got Boeing with their Starliner as well, but we now know that this is the future, and we're all here to witness it. And Rachel, I'm going to hand back to you now, because we want to follow up with some words about Space for Humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everyone who's been here sitting and watching this and celebrating with us. Thank you to our panelists, Frank, Ytasha, Claudia, Alan, MaryLiz. Thank you to my amazing team, Mimi, Jared, and Liam. And Sarah, amazing job hosting this. Thank you so much.
I would like to say it's 1 a.m. in the UK, so I am starting to, I've got to be up in about 4.5 hours, but no, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the whole team at Space for Humanity, everyone who's been working behind the scenes, because I know how hard you guys worked to put this together, and Liam from ISS Above and Beyond, who is the man behind all the technical and the visual images you see today. So everyone give a big shout out and a big hi in the comments to Liam. And thank you so much for everyone for enjoying this launch with us tonight, and to watching humans reach for the stars once again.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And we had a contest. And so now it is time to announce our winners of the contest. For people who donated $20 a month or more, they entered a raffle to send their DNA to the moon with LifeShip. So just a little bit about LifeShip is they'll be sending DNA to the moon on a payload in a rocket in 2021 to be landing with the Astrobotic moon lander. And their big mission is to back up our biosphere for eternity and send all of life into the cosmos. So the winners, which I don't know if they're with us tonight, but the winners of that are Derek Flickinger, Sergio Davila, Jesus Edik Medina, and Stephen Glickbarg. So we will be sending you all emails and congratulations, and thank you so much for your support of Space for Humanity and of our mission. If you guys want to get involved with the mission, you know, we host these parties. We have our social media accounts. You can follow us at Space Humanity. And ultimately, what we are doing is we are creating a movement to expand access to space for all of humanity. And thank you for joining us and celebrating this moment with us together.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And can I just give a shout out to all our sponsors as well, partners for this event? Planetary
Please,
Society,
thank you.
LifeShip, ISS Above, Student for the Exploration and Development of Space, New York Space Alliance, Boss Planet, and the Space Court Foundation. And thank you so much, Rachel, for all your hard work in this event.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah.
And thank you to all of you for watching tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Ad Astra.
Bye. See you later.
Astra.
Ad Astra.